Hi, welcome to another edition of Malden Public Library's Urban Ecology series. Today we'll be focusing on part 2, the tangible ecosystem. My name is Jean and I'll be leading you through this activity. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the Public Library Innovation Exchange from MIT. They've developed these activities and I've just adjusted them for the virtual format. I also want to thank Prialta Lane and Associates for sponsoring the Urban Ecology Kits that are available at the Malden Public Library. This is part 2 of the series. If you haven't had a chance to go back to part 1, it's the sensory nature walk, and you can also watch that video on our YouTube channel. Part 3 is coming soon, and that's the Understanding Urban Soils activity. If you didn't get a chance to pick up the Urban Ecology Kit, you can just call the library and reserve one today, as long as supplies are still available. But you can also find many of these things or replacements for these things in your home. We'll be using many of these today, but this is the kit for all 3 activities. First of all, I hope you had a chance to go on a sensory nature walk. I hope it went well and you had a very pleasant experience and learned a lot of wonderful things. You'll be using some of what you've learned from the sensory nature walk to help you with this next activity. So I hope it was a rewarding experience. Collecting specimens. So you may have done this already on your nature walk, but if you haven't, then you just head back out and do another walk focusing on collecting specimens. These are the specimens that I found at Fellsmere Pond. Kind of an array of things, but some similar, some different. So a good selection. For this activity, it's good to have a good variety. Here are 6 ways to collect specimens. The first one is the one that I focused on, which is picking, and then mapping, photographing, pressing, interviewing, and rubbing. Picking is exactly what it sounds like. Pick up fallen leaves, rocks, acorns, trash, all kinds of things. Just be careful when you're picking things up so that you aren't touching anything that's too sharp or that could hurt you in any way. You can also do mapping. Mapping is when you mark interesting locations or areas where you collected certain items so that you know exactly where you found them. You can do this by drawing a map in your field journal. You can get a printed map from online, print it out, and mark the locations on a printout. And there's one other way that I think is really cool, which is to use Google Earth. If you haven't had a chance to check out Google Earth, it's really neat because you can see nature, not just the streets like you would on Google Map, though they do have the street view, but you can zoom in and out and get really close and see a lot of detail. And with Google Earth, you can actually mark your own walk. So you create a project and you can mark where you saw your soil samples, or you found like a really cool leaf, or you know, maybe different bodies of water, all kinds of things. It's very neat, and there's tutorial videos throughout, so they make it really easy. And you can also map the walk that you took exactly. You can see here, this is Fellsmere Pond. So in blue, I marked a few of the notable places. One was where I got my soil sample. Another one was where I took a picture of the pond through the trees, and another where I took a picture of the path that you saw on an earlier slide. So it's another great way to keep track of where you took your photos, using your phone for photography, and then using Google Earth to pair it to the location. And Google Earth also has a function where you can do a slideshow, so you can review your whole journey through the presentation that you create. And you can also take notes in the locations. So every time you place a marker, you can take notes on that location. So it's really a very robust tool, and you just tie it to your Google account. So we talked a little bit about this, photographing. Photographing, I think a lot of us do it naturally anyway, now that we have our phones with us. Take photos of the landscape, take photos of cool animals, cool trees, all kinds of things. Take photos of interactions when you notice that the urban environment, you have the natural environment interacting with the man-made environment. So that's very fun. You can document things that way. You can also create a viewfinder, which is basically just a window that you take a picture of to frame a scene. And I recommend, if you're doing this on your phone, that you keep a separate folder for your nature walk photos so that you can find them easily and supplement your field journal that way. You might even want to take notes in your field journal that you do have a picture of that saved on your phone. Another lovely way to preserve items is by pressing. You can press wildflowers or leaves in particular. Make sure you choose dry flowers or leaves and press them between 2 pieces of parchment paper inside of a heavy book and wait 7 to 10 days. This helps them dry out further, and also it flattens them so you have a nice object that you can keep. Some people frame them too and hang them up on their wall. But you can also, once they've been flattened, you can also tape them into your field journal. Another way that you might not think of is interviewing. So we might be going to a location for the first time, or the first time where we've really looked at it, but locations have existed for as long as the Earth has existed. So there might be someone who knows a lot about the area that you're focusing on, as well as people that have lived there for a while and watched it change, and the environment's constantly changing. And you can also find old photos online or search in books or archives. The library does have some old photos of Malden, so you might be able to find the area where you're looking, and you'll notice that trees have grown, they've gotten larger. The Malden Public Library actually has a large tree on our front lawn, and if you find old photos of the library, you can watch the tree grow over time. So it's very cool. And another fun way to collect information for objects that maybe you can't put in a bag and bring back with you, or you want to explore in a different way, is to do rubbings. Use crayons and tracing paper to make rubbings of tree bark and other interesting textures. All you do is find a flat surface, if you have the object, and put the paper over the object and use the side of a crayon to do a rubbing. And you'll notice when you do the rubbing that it highlights certain textural features of that object. So on a leaf, it has that center spine, as well as the branches within the leaf that help give it structure and help guide water. And that shows up on a rubbing. You can kind of see that here in the first picture. And then also, like, I cannot pick up a whole tree and put that in my field journal. So if I want to document the texture of that tree, I can take the piece of tracing paper, place it on the tree, and take a crayon and rub the side of it. And so you can see the texture of that tree. And that's actually the Malden Public Library's tree. Okay, some things to keep in mind when you are looking for your objects. What types of objects can you find? It doesn't have to just be leaves and sticks. You can do man-made things that you find. You might find a bottle cap or twisties, all kinds of things. Let it be open. Don't have a narrow idea of the things that you can get. Just be careful when you're picking them up. Make sure that it's safe and avoid anything like broken glass or anything like that. And also, how large was the area that you got your objects from? You know, did you focus on 10 by 10 feet? Did you look in the whole park? You know, was there a variety of, like, I found this type of object in this area and I found another type of object in a different area? And did you document this? You want to track where you're finding these objects so that when you're reviewing your journal, you can see if you can notice any trends and say like, oh, maybe I found many of this type of leaf in this part of the park, but in this part of the park, it was completely different types of leaves. And that would tell you like where the trees are. And did you write about or take any pictures of the area? And did you talk to anyone about the area? What's the history of the location that you were looking at? And for more ideas on collecting, check out the Sorting and Collecting zine. Okay, so you've got all of your specimens. Hopefully you collected at least 8 to 10 is a really good sample size. And now we want to sort them. Now, why do we want to sort them? Sometimes putting objects in different arrangements tells us different things about the object that we may not have thought of. I recommend that you lay all your objects out on a table or on the floor, somewhere where you can clean up easily. You might want to put them on newspaper just to keep any surfaces clean from dirt. And look at them and see if you notice any patterns. For this sort, I did a pretty simple sort, which you can probably tell is just by size, so smallest to largest in terms of height. But you could sort by weight, mass, all kinds of things. Another thing you might want to sort by is biotic versus abiotic. So biotic means that the object is alive, whereas abiotic means that it's non-living. Can you think of examples of biotic items? So some ideas, maybe you thought of a tree or birds, animals, but there are many, many living beings and plants, fungus, all kinds of things in our environment. Now, what about abiotic? So abiotic, you could do rocks or dirt, all kinds of things, trash, as well as some things that might not be as tangible. So like the sun. The sun is an abiotic factor because the sun is a part of our environment and plants need the sun in order to grow, as they also need water and often dirt. And also consider things like cars. How do cars and pollution affect our environment? How do they affect animals? How do they affect plant growth? That kind of thing too. So it's not just the natural elements, but also the man-made elements. Now, what do we do with objects that were once living and no longer living? So if you have a leaf on a tree, when it's on the tree, it's alive, but after it's detached, it no longer has the sources that it needs in order to stay alive. So it will dry out, break down, and decompose and become dirt. So once it goes through that process, it's considered abiotic because it's changed form and it's no longer alive. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed sorting your materials, and don't just sort them once. I think it would be great if you sort them and take a picture and write about it, and then be like, okay, well, how else can I sort these items? And what does it tell me about these items that I've sorted them this way? And it might not be obvious at first, but the great thing about science is that if you document things, you might find down the road that you remember doing it and you learn something new later. So it's always great to have a data and documentation of your findings, even if you're not quite sure what they mean yet. For next week, we are going to do Understanding Urban Soils. So I invite you to join me on Wednesday, August 19th at 3 p.m. and we will do a live discussion of our findings with Understanding Urban Soils. In preparation, you will need your jar, shovel, and your field journal. Use the shovel to dig up a small amount of dirt and fill your jar about a third full, and put some additional soil aside in a bag for next week's discussion that you don't add water to. And add enough water so that it's almost full, the jar is almost full, but not entirely. And then shake it for 30 seconds and put it somewhere where it will be out of the way for 48 hours. I recommend that you take pictures during this process. So take a picture before you add the water, write down any observations that you have, take a picture after you add the water, and shake it and take a picture. And then after 24 hours, take another picture. And after 48 hours, take another picture. And put all those pictures like next to each other in a slideshow on your phone, or you can draw them if you want to in your journal, and you can see the changes. And we'll talk about what happens. When you do the soil shake though, please make sure you screw the lid on tight and hold it while you are shaking it, so you don't accidentally end up with dirt everywhere. Okay, thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, you can feel free to call the library at 781-324-0218 or email me, and I will get back to you. And I hope that you enjoy this activity. Thank you.